About 2.5 years.
So do we have to have the names of everyone that's here? Just the board members?
We'll let them know about that.
It was very interesting.
Good morning.
From a company with about 2,000 people to a company with 50,000. Yeah. It's huge.
Brian, go ahead.
14,000.
I thought he was your extra. Why we urgently need to get this business done.
Well, I have some emails. A lot of people are willing to talk over the phone. People are willing to put it in the email. If we need to call in the heavy hitters.
Smack me, no.
I don't want somebody else.
Have you met Ann?
Of course.
And Rouser?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Those are Indian person.
She's staying over
The
there.
back of my hair looks okay.
Have you done your?
Doing better.
Crazy.
That's my makeup.
It's farm day.
Yeah, she's, I'll lead them by the hand up here.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'll get.
Yes, don't let
Me too, I sat in my car.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance to call you yesterday.
I know you must be busy.
Call for the need order, rise and pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a working meeting with the Broadwater County, or the Broadwater Hospital District Board and the county commissioners about the Brownsfield cleanup alternatives for Grovers, for the former Grover Vex. Who would like to lead the discussion?
One thing we should do is just ask for public comment for anything not on the agenda.
Oh, I guess we will have public comment for anything not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move to this item.
So I don't know if you guys have all been privy to some of the email communication that we have.
I don't think they all have.
I have copies if you want, so if you would just take one and pass it down.
I think as long as you've got an attendance for it.
Okay, all right. Okay, call me if you need me. Section 2.
I thought we had. You need these back?
My memory is John said that was a text code when Grover had it. And you said, excellent, did they change?
It wasn't a text, it wasn't,
When Al was working, there was a text code
yeah, and I don't know, when Don took it over from Mel, it might have changed.
changed.
I'm not sure. I think he went to a conference. I'm not real sure.
Not that it matters, it was a gas
No.
station.
Do you want me to give a little history?
Yeah.
Okay, so first off, there's donuts here. If you guys want some sugar, help yourselves. It's also made with milk and wheat, so we're talking about a health food.
All right.
There's no ketchup on it.
Nice.
Well, I need to have one.
All right, good. I have to tell you, I cheated and had it before the meeting. That doesn't mean I won't have it. So brownfields. Brownfield is a federally funded program that helps communities get rid of blight caused from contamination. So 100 years ago, 50 years ago, there was not nearly the understanding or the adherence to any kind of environmental protection. So what we have today in Townsend specifically, and this is all over the country, probably all over the world, but we have a number of business locations, some residential, where there was a petroleum tank, a car repair shop, gas station, and the leaks of that petroleum today are cleaned by Brownsfields. The money comes from a fund, a variety of sources, but one of the funds is much like the Coal Trust Board. So the businesses that were responsible for the contamination put money into a fund, and over the years it grows, and that's one of the sources of Brownsfield. So what we need to do, if we have a Brownsfield, we need to work with the Montana Department of Environmental Quality and the Montana Petroleum Board. And we apply with them to use Brownsfield money to clean up a site. There's been several sites, but two of the latest sites is the lot across the street from the commercial and the lot that has Burt's Hardware on it. Those were both cleaned through this program. So we've seen some success, quite a bit of success actually. So what we have today is an ambulance building that we discovered is sitting on top of a petroleum lake. A good deal of petroleum under it. It also has black mold that used to only be active when it rained. Now it's active a little bit more often. Dr. Scott Kenny said in one of our commission meetings, a public meeting, that he is uncomfortable with having the ambulance and medical equipment in a building with active black mold or black mold. It also has asbestos, lead, and this winter the ceiling fell in. That's what's housing our ambulances.
And the
So,
roof leaks.
and the roof leaks, yeah. And there's a 1.5 inch split in the foundation. So, anything else? So what we have is an opportunity twofold. One is, a couple months ago, we have an opportunity to use brownfields. So a couple months ago, there was a similar situation in Lewistown. And Brownsfield doesn't clean up asbestos, but they made an exception for a building in Lewistown, and there was a verbal agreement that they would extend that same exception to Townsend's ambulance building. So right now, we have a window of opportunity to get the ambulance building torn down, including the asbestos, free of charge to Broadwater County citizens. The original quote was that it would cost us anywhere from 7 to, I forget the top, was it 38,000 or was it 20? 38,000 roughly, because they didn't cover the asbestos. So this is a window of opportunity. The reason we're meeting now is the email you have in front of you. There's a lot of pieces that need to fall into place to get this done. Because we make the vote today, if we do, I hope we will, doesn't mean that the building's going to be torn down tomorrow. What it means is we then engage DEQ formally and the Petro Board formally, and we get paperwork done, and then we set the date for when this will happen. We'll need to figure out what to do with the ambulances in the interim. We have some plans. So there's a lot of moving parts. This is really step one. And the reason that we don't want to wait an undisclosed or unknown amount of time or continue to kick the can down the road is, one, the building's falling apart, and it's going to become more than just a health hazard and a safety hazard and a prosperity hazard to our community and our downtown, but it's also gonna kill somebody if we're not cognizant of the fact that it is in really poor shape or makes somebody sick. So the Petroleum Board has 2 more meetings this summer. They do not have it in writing that they'll clean up the asbestos. We need to jump on that. That's another reason we don't wanna just kick the can down the road, that we actually have to work and get this done now. Oh, and the other thing, the building is one thing, the petroleum lake underneath it needs to be what's called land farmed. And spread out the petroleum contaminants and let UV rays oxidize those contaminants to clean them up. We don't have enough UV rays in the winter time. It has to be done during the summer, preferably during the hottest months of the summer. That's July and August, that's just a couple months away. If we wait until the end of June or another arbitrary date, we could very well miss our opportunity for a number of reasons. So, I think that's it in a nutshell. If I missed anything, or if you guys have any questions, let me know what I missed and what I can fill in.
What do you look for, I mean, when do you think it would happen, to tear it down?
I think it could happen fairly quickly, but again, it's not gonna happen tomorrow, and we
But
can
I mean, you're
actually,
looking at June or July or August?
I would hope in August to take full advantage of the heat of the summer and those oxidizing UV
And
rays,
what-
but it's up to us.
Yeah,
what
well,
the time is.
when we do have plans for the ambulances in the meantime, what's gonna happen in the meantime? Before, as I understand, the county bought the Opportunity Bank building,
Yeah, we're in
and
the
that's
final
where you're gonna use
stages.
the storage.
Right, and we wanna use one of the doors on the ambulance building, it'll save us, I think, 8,000? Is
Yeah,
that,
pretty close to that.
so it's a substantial amount, so if we could use that door and shift it over to Opportunity Bank, that would save us some money. Of course, that has to be done right before a tear down. Mike has some construction work, Mike Myers, on the ambulance building before we move the ambulances in, that'll take some time. And that's another reason to at least decide formally if we're gonna do this, so that he has his marching orders, and we can let him have enough time to get it done. There might be a lag where we have to find a place to put the ambulances and the medical equipment for a couple of weeks. We don't know at this point.
Well, the building is owned by the hospital district, and our only interest in it was destroying ambulances. I don't know why the hospital district ended up with ownership, quite frankly. We got it, the record shows in 2004. Well, why we took it, I don't know, because I think it was even a liability then, and we view it, or at least I do, as a distinct liability to own it. I'm afraid of what happens if that petroleum does eventually get into the water system in Townsend. What liability we would have for that, I don't know, but I don't like the idea. And we've been allowing people to use it as a meeting room for various, I think 4-H met in there for a while. I don't think anybody's meeting in there now because of the black mold, so I can see no reason why we shouldn't take advantage of this and get rid of it. I think the property is worth more without the building on it, and with remediated soil, it'd be worth more than it is now. I don't think you could sell that building for anything right now.
No, and this program wouldn't extend, I understand, to private business. That really limits,
Yeah.
because it's not only worth nothing, it's worth a negative. Whoever buys it in the condition it's in is gonna have to pay a lot of money to make that building usable in any way, so, yeah, its value is in the negatives.
There's very little historical value to that building. It's not one of our historic buildings. And the Mike Meyer, you and I went over and went through the building last November, December, somewhere. Mike told us that a while back, a few years ago, when he was working with the city crew on the parking lot, there were issues with the parking lot and they were down working. They were standing knee-deep in diesel. And as Hugh said, if that gets out of its natural boundary right now, we could be liable for any damages. And a little known secret or fact, Townsend, just outside of Townsend, in I think it was 1935, was the second biggest earthquake in Montana. Until the Ebgen Lake, it was the biggest earthquake in Montana. If that happened again, that petroleum could very well break through. And if any of the city water mains were damaged, it could get into the city water system. And, you know, the hospital district would be fully liable for that. And I think we have to get it cleaned up.
Does anybody see any reason we should not?
No, I don't.
Not me. I think the sooner the better.
Hopefully tomorrow.
Tomorrow would be
No,
good.
that won't happen.
So as I understand it, a lot of the paperwork is already in motion.
It is, just in case. So our partners have actually been kind of trying to pull us along. And so they've actually started some of this in motion, but nothing can be officially done until these two boards both vote officially to move forward in this process. And we need to no longer be halted in that, so this is an opportunity, I think, for us. And
Well,
conversations, I think we're all on board, I mean, you guys have already said it, we've talked about it in these meetings as well, so, that's all I have.
well, let the record show that all our board members are here. We do have a quorum for the district board. All our members, all 5 members. So I guess, should we vote separately? Should I entertain a motion from my board, from our district board to?
Can we talk a little more about the asbestos problem?
Sure.
If Brownfield doesn't want to put it in writing about the asbestos removal, how do we go about taking care of it?
Since it's collateral, and there's some questions with that we can talk about later if you want, or it doesn't even need to be discussed, but since it's collateral, yeah, it's your building, but we have control over it. I think a 50-50 split, whatever that cost would be, is appropriate. That's just my opinion, I haven't talked with either Daryl or Mike about that, but when it became collateral, I think it became joint. So I don't think that should fall on just the district board. That's
I
just
think
my
that
opinion.
asbestos is confined to a boiler outside the building. It's a big, I guess it must have been used for the heating plant at one time. And it's outside the hospital building and just off the alley. Have you seen it?
Probably, but I didn't realize what I was looking at.
Yeah, nobody does, it's just a big boiler outside there, it's covered over with, you can't tell what it is.
So we'd actually have, you know, we could leave it standing. They can take the building down
Yeah,
and leave it, as long as you don't disturb the asbestos, you know, it's fine. But I think we'd be well worth, you know, getting rid of it, rather than having more liability sitting there.
It's not good to carry.
No, and, you know, just having it sit there, a useless structure that is a liability, just doesn't make sense either. But hopefully, Brownsfield will stick with the verbal agreement and
Yeah.
clean that up as well.
I don't understand why it costs so much to get rid of asbestos. You think you can just take a forklift, throw that in the back of the truck and haul it away somewhere?
Mike's got a trailer that works great.
That's not how it works.
Another thing with timing is, our issue is directly tied to an issue in Lewistown. They did it for Lewistown. If we do it immediately after, it seems to me that there's a precedent set, and it's a whole lot harder to say no. If we wait, it's a whole lot easier to say no. So that's another timing thing.
So after the building is removed, then we'll just turn the area into a playground for the kids?
We could, because it'll be clean.
Well, let's talk about that. What eventually should we do with it? Should we sell it, the property, the hospital district? I think I think the lot has some value, and certainly more value than the building that with it. And maybe we could sell it, we have no source of income anymore, so.
Yeah, we could, I think the collateral issue is a good issue to discuss.
Sure, let's do it.
It was that the ambulance building was used as collateral in the agreement with the county when they invested in invested the $750,000. The ambulance building was used as collateral. That does limit somewhat, it doesn't limit it, but it does complicate the issue some. The hospital district does not have full control of the building. And we've worked with Corey, and we believe, dealing with Corey, that if we replace the collateral with something worth more than, worth as much or more than the existing ambulance building, then we're still good. The ambulance building, as we've noted, is probably worth negative money. So if we do the demolition and clean it up, the lot is worth more than the ambulance building. So we've replaced the collateral. I'm not sure what we can do with that lot once we've cleaned it up, as long as it's still being used for collateral. So we may be limited there. As the hospital district, we can build something else there, but we don't have the money to build something.
Is that lot, the parking lot next to it owned by the county, has that got issues too with petroleum?
No,
They're not.
not yet, not unless the lake has traveled. And the thought is, if it travels, it'll probably travel southwest, not east.
The county have any idea what they use, you wanted to keep that as a parking lot?
We
You
haven't
don't know
discussed that, and my hope would be is, if you guys do decide to go that route, that we could have some joint conversations. One of the thoughts that I have in mind is the old Power Townsend building, which is historical. I have heard that there are windows on the west side of that building that right now are covered by the ambulance building. If, when, hopefully, we tear down that old building that is leaned up, or not leaned up, because we've been told it's not structural to the Howard Townsend building, but it's blocking it right now. So if you get that cleaned up, and you do discover that this beautiful historic building has windows on that west side, my hope would be that we could discuss some way to keep a distance between the Power Townsend building and that lot, or the building of something in there, so that those windows could actually get some natural light. Would make the opportunity of selling that building and putting something in there that's, you know, of benefit to the community a whole lot more attractive. And so one thing I would be willing to talk about is a trade of the property, so that we could have some kind of a buffer in there. The county could own a buffer to protect that historic building, and then the hospital district board could have the property to the sidewalk. And it'd be a corner lot too, more financially attractive to a buyer.
So this petroleum lake is moving towards the water tower.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That's the route it would take. We work with a gentleman named Earl Griffith. He's been doing this, he did the other two remediations. He's been working with us for over 20 years. That is his analysis.
So I'm gonna throw something out here for you guys to consider when you make your decision. And this is speaking from experience.
You'd say that, repeat that out loud.
I'm speaking with experience
Yeah,
with the lot that we had.
oh yes, you did, you sure did.
So, once you clean this up, even though you clean it up, it still will not be fully remediated for several years afterwards.
Oh, is that right?
That's right. So they're gonna put in test wells, and they'll test them every year. And along with that's gonna be ongoing cost.
Oh. Ah,
Yes.
okay.
Yep,
I don't like to hear that word cost.
yep, and if you want to sell that to somebody else, they will have to decide whether they wanna take on that liability or not, until you finally get a statement from the DEQ that it has been fully remediated.
Well, when they take that soil
And that could
out.
be 6, 7 years from now.
Wow. When you take that soil out and you have it, you farm it or whatever you
Right.
say. Well, then you replace it with soil, but it's not the same soil, is it?
No, we'll
It's not
replace
the-
it with different soil.
Ah.
And the testing of the wells, the cost issue, because we are a local government and a hospital district, I understand that's actually paid by the Petro Board and DEQ as part of the package.
That's not true.
Oh, okay.
No. Whoever owns that piece of property will be paying for that testing until it is complete.
Now, you guys were private, because right now it's being monitored by DEQ. And so
Well, DEQ monitored ours as well.
that, and I think that could be the case, that it could go either way. And I think we'd want to get some clarification on that. Even if there is a cost for monitoring, it's still a whole lot less than the liability, which is not just on you guys, but it's on us too. So it's all the citizens from both sides of the county. But, yeah, we'll have to get clarification on that.
Daryl, do you remember how much the monitoring did cost?
I do, but I don't wanna say. I'll tell you it's a lot,
Oh, really?
yeah.
And I'll see if I can
Well-
get clarification now.
That had to be done.
But regardless,
Yeah.
we have to decide who's gonna pay for it, and should that be the taxpayers that have to pay for that? If that's what everybody's thinking, if it's gonna be partly you or partly us, we don't have a funding source, right?
We no longer have a funding source.
Okay, so,
So is the major cost of that monitoring, is that the wells or is that the actual, because the wells are already in place?
right, so they'll come down and they'll check them.
But the major cost is the actual monitoring or is the placement of the wells?
Well, you'll have to incur, well, I don't know, if that cost may be partly covered under the Brownsfield thing, I don't know that for sure, but the monitoring and all the analysis that's done by DEQ.
Okay, so my question was, monitoring after cleanup, is it paid by county or DEQ? Answer, DEQ.
Oh.
So,
Who's that
again,
from?
Brian. Brian is the state expert on Brownsfield.
All right, well,
So, and it could be the difference because we're government, I don't know. And we'll want to get some details and some clarification on that beyond just this text.
So by today, we're just okay in getting the paperwork.
Right, right.
Well, I don't see any problem with that at all, myself.
Can't leave it.
So do we need to select an option out of this analysis then, or are we just, because you have 4 options in there? So do
Both.
we need to select that option, or we just need to approve the,
My suggestion would be to have our follow-up meeting after we've decided to move forward with Earl Griffith and, who's in your email, Kingsbury from DEQ, Brandon, I think. And to talk to them about Brandon Kingsbury, about what the best route to go is, get clarification on the monitoring of those wells and have them guide us through this, because none of us at this table are the experts on this. Daryl probably has the most knowledge of anybody.
you know, I'm how knowledgeable I am, just had a little bit of experience with it.
And what we'll, before taking a vote, we'll want to close the working meeting, go into a regular meeting to make that decision.
So you said this has happened 2 other places in town. How is their monitoring work?
That I don't know, but both were private, so they were done a whole lot differently, and I'm not sure of those details.
And here's the sad thing about this whole deal, I mean, in our situation, it didn't even occur on our property, it migrated from across the street. Yeah, when they had the big bulk farm across the street, yeah, so it migrated in the groundwater, but they don't care. Right?
Ouch, ouch,
Yeah.
ouch. Big ouch.
Yeah,
It's where it's at and where it came from.
so,
Where is the other one?
Burt's Hardware, right underneath it, so.
Then you
it's
also had
clear.
Grover's, and you also had, was Rocky Mountain Supply, Gallatin Farmers, when it contaminated the pool, was that Brownsfield, or do you know?
Oh, good question, I don't know. Something to ask though, cause I'm curious now.
That might have been before Brownsfield even came into existence.
Yeah, and I don't know the history of when it started.
I do know that MBAC has been doing all the Brownsfield work, you know, throughout the state, so Brian and MBAC are very familiar with the Brownsfield process and what's involved. But we do need to check and make sure that the county, but if all we're doing is starting the paperwork and getting it started, then I think we're okay with that. And in the meantime, we have, I think, a couple of questions to resolve. One is the cost of the monitoring. How much is it? Who's going to pay it? And then the other is what can we really do with the property once it's demolished and cleaned up until the county investment is paid back?
yeah, I think that's gonna be probably a pretty big issue. That building is held as collateral
Yeah.
on that kind of loan.
And I think, you know, once, I think a good case can be made that we're actually improving the collateral by demolishing the building and making it worth more. But I'm not sure that once the cleanup is done, what we can do with that property until the collateral issue is resolved. Certainly, we could build a building on it, you know, if we had money, and that would.
I don't know why we would want to build a building for anything.
Well,
Yeah.
since we don't have any money, that's moved.
So what are we voting for today?
The vote today, in my opinion, should be one of the hospital district board and one of the commissioners to move forward with the DEQ and Petro board process with Brownsfield to remediate and tear down.
So
tear down
are
and
we
remediate
essentially authorizing
a
them
lot.
back to proceed, is that what it is?
Well, it wouldn't actually, MBAC's gonna help guide, but this isn't their progress or process, it's ours.
So who are we authorizing to move?
We are authorizing Broadwater County to work with DEQ and the Petro Board to remediate the site. Yeah,
Well, here's what I don't understand, is why is Broadwater County involved? It's not even our building.
it's collateral.
Well, I understand that part, but this is their building.
If we don't make a vote and DEQ comes back and says, why isn't the county supportive, why didn't the
I mean,
county
we can
vote?
support them, I'm not saying we're not gonna support them.
Does it hurt us to have a vote? Does it hurt us to, after these guys vote, to have a vote that says, we support this process and moving forward with this process? No. Could it potentially hurt us if we choose not to? Yes. So, the fact that it was collateralized makes us partners. It just does. And that's why this isn't only up to you guys, because what you decide now affects us, because it's collateral.
And from the hospital district side, we always want to work with the county. We never want to be crosswise with the county on anything. And then in particular, since the county does own the collateral, we want to make sure that we're all in agreement about that. So it is the hospital district's building. And I believe we could proceed without, as long as we're replacing without the county support, but we'd rather work with the county and have the county support them work, you know, independently or crosswise.
Yeah. I'm not saying that we don't wanna support you, but I don't see why we should fund you.
I think that would be a separate vote,
Yeah,
and that would have to, I think, be argued out.
and I'm not sure that you should.
Right?
Yeah, we'd like to have the county support in the decision, but I'm not sure that anything to do with that building is the county's responsibility.
I agree with you totally, Vic. I think we've got nothing to lose because we've got no skin in the game other than the building that's falling down.
Yep.
And we don't need. Why we ever took ownership of it, I have no idea.
That would be a good
Crux of the
question.
whole thing too.
I think it was gifted to us
It's a gag.
by somebody who knew the liability. It unloaded quick. It was 2004 it happened, before I don't know, any idea.
Yeah, we liked it when the county was using the building and paying for it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's-
It was a sweet deal, you know.
It was only supposed to be for a
We
year.
had our name on it, that's all we, you know. So, and, you know, you can't get blood out of a turnip, and if we have no money and somebody comes after and says you gotta pay for the monitoring, well, we haven't got it. So what do? You sue the county? I don't know, sue the district? I don't know. But in any case, I think it'll only get worse as time goes on if we don't do something, so. We have not, as I see it, not much choice.
yeah, and
In
I
any
think-
case, whether the county supports us or not, in any case, to any degree. We own the building and we're stuck with it. You owned that property, you were stuck with it.
That's right.
You know, I think we should get the property assessed, pay down the warrants to the value of the property, and then, you know, then default on it, and let you have it.
Could you gift it to somebody?
That's the way to get
Very
rid of
nice.
it. We default.
Can't
We don't want to do that.
Collateral.
But I think getting the paperwork started does not obligate us to actually complete. And if we find out that the cost of monitoring is very high and that the district has to pay for it, then we can make a decision at that point in time whether
Yeah.
to proceed or not.
I agree.
But you can't waive it, because then you've got major liability issues.
Yeah. And we are partners. I mean, a good lawyer is gonna sue everybody they possibly can.
You've got deeper pockets than we do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Deep but empty.
Alright. So what motion would you suggest we adopt? When?
Before a motion, we need to close the working meeting and go
Oh,
back to
all
a
right.
general meeting.
Oh, I see, okay.
And then we can make the motions, but it is a joint meeting, so you two are joint chairs. I think that's how it would work, even though it's here.
So do we wanna have Ann come back down and we're gonna make a decision then? or-
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Would you like me to go get her?
Yeah.
I'll go get her, Laura.
Thank you, Mike.
Cory?
I guess I'll just offer a little bit of information since it's kind of bandied about a bit. So generally, I think, number one, just in terms of dealing with the current problem, you guys would be well advised to proceed and I think all the things we've been said about containing and starting to solve the problem need to be done. As to the building and the land being used as collateral for the registered warrants, we all know from what's been discussed publicly is that that whole landscape may change over the next 6 to 12 months as far as if St. Pete's does acquire the hospital. So in the event that that happens, my goal and recommendation will be that we substitute this collateral with something of more value from collateral from the St. Pete's end. So that's the goal that I have in mind. And if that happens, and then that relieves some obligations from this property, that once it's cleaned up, open up a lot more options of what to do with it.
Oh, yeah.
Come back.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Huggy, private citizen. I want to remind the two boards who own other property. The other piece of property is across the island. It's behind the Grover buildings. The district is in the district name. That value, that property has some value too. It's not part of the security interest collateral, but it is owned by the hospital district.
Which property are you talking about?
Behind the two Grover buildings, there's a slip of piece of property that goes diagonal across
Yeah.
there. It's owned by the hospital district.
Is that right? I thought that was owned by the county.
Nope, not owned by the county, it's not owned by THS, it's not owned by Grove, it's owned by the hospital district.
So what's referred to in the paperwork as Lot B of that
Oh.
acquisition of the,
Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
it's a 50 by 145
I know
lot.
I know the lot
Yeah.
you're talking about. I didn't know we owned it.
Yeah, that's the district's property.
Is that worth much?
Probably more than the ambulance.
My point.
So we will close the working meeting and reopen the commissioners' meeting. I think we need we need an action by the district board that would approve, and then we would have to have a motion by the commission board to support that action.
Just to clarify, we're opening the commissioners' meeting, are we opening our meeting
I
as
guess
well?
we are opening our meeting, all right. I'll call our meeting to order, all right. We've had a very thorough discussion. We have no motion on the floor.
I move that we proceed with the paperwork with the DEQ and the,
Petroleum Board?
yes, the petrol board. And to move forward on demolishing the building, but that we need to find out. So I move that we move forward, but not necessarily approve the demolition until we find out all of the information from the DEQ.
I second that.
May I offer comment?
Certainly.
With the motion made and seconded, that means we'll have to come back to another meeting and then decide to move forward officially, which could delay the process.
So you think the motion is inadequate?
I do. I think the motion should be strong. I think it should be firm. And I think that always, if you get information from DEQ, Brandon and Earl, when they come talk to us, that says, oh, you guys are looking at, hundreds of thousands of dollars to monitor, and it's going to be a liability, even worse, and whatever it is that they want to say, that you don't like, you can always reconvene and say, based on the new information we've received, we are going to step back and no longer support moving forward. But if there's a question mark in the motion, it weakens our ability to pursue the asbestos funding and to make sure that the petroleum board know how serious we are about taking care of this hazard.
Good point.
So the motion is made and seconded. What do you have to do, withdraw the motion, or how do you do
I
that?
think we have to vote on the motion and then,
Vote to kill the motion?
You
Yeah.
can have a friendly amendment to the motion. So another board member could offer a friendly amendment. If it's accepted by Vic and Dawn, it could proceed.
It seems
Or
so
you can do the
complicated.
other.
Can I
It
make
is.
one comment before
Yeah.
anybody makes an amendment? I would think that it would be prudent if we're going to move ahead with this to somehow include that you consider the cleanup alternatives considered and you strongly advocate for alternative number 4,
I don't have a.
which is full abatement and soil excavation.
That's a good point.
Do I have that?
This is,
No, I don't have that.
What is the exact motion?
I don't think any of us have that.
Vic moved to proceed with the paperwork with DEQ and Petroleum Board to move forward with the process to demolish the building. Seconded by Dawn.
So you vote on that, and then change it?
I think I would rather withdraw the event, the motion, and then reform
Okay,
it.
look, you have to have permission in a second.
You have my permission.
I'll withdraw the motion.
All right, motion withdrawn. All right, so we're back to square one. And Mike suggests that we could go for option number 4, which is we're suggesting what we really want is full abatement and excavation, soil excavation. Did anybody see that?
I don't know why
Number
we
4 at the
would.
very bottom of the page, which is, I think that's what we do want.
Yeah,
And we're just voting to get the ball rolling. All right.
Can you say something like, with the information that we now have, I move to proceed? You can always say.
It's kind of hard to scan. Excuse me.
So I will move that we move forward with the work and getting DEQ and the Petro Board moving, and that we
That's
do the
enough, I think.
paperwork for the full abatement and soil excavation.
Should we include our brownfield partners? In this?
Sure.
So what's the motion?
So far as move forward with paperwork with DEQ and Petro Board for full abatement of the soil.
Through the Brownfield program.
Yeah, full abatement and soil excavation through the Browns field. Are you still gonna second?
I second this motion.
A second time.
A second.
Any discussion? Hearing none?
You want to have public comment?
Do any public comment?
Yeah.
All right. Any public comment? Thank you, Chris. Any public comment? Hearing none? Ready for the question? Question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. All right. Thank you all.
I think that's the only thing on our agenda.
I think it is. All right. Wonderful.
now I guess we would entertain a motion for the county to support the hospital district board's support for the Brownsfield operation.
I will move that, as a collateral partner with the property in question, that the county support and move forward with the hospital district board for a brownfields full abatement and soil excavation of the property.
Is there a second?
Discussion. So I want to be very clear that we're not committing any county funds to this at this point. We're just talking about going forward with the paperwork and getting the process moving, right? That's what we're talking about? Yeah.
I have put no monetary, information into the motion,
Yeah.
so
I
yeah.
just want to make sure that we're very clear on that. And when that time comes, then we'll make that decision, but. I'll second the motion.
Corey, do you know what, so if this does go ahead, then what's the county and the district's relation? Is at some point, is the county going to end up with that responsibility?
It's owned by the hospital district. They are responsible for it. The only way I see the county being responsible is if down the road, the county agrees to take on that responsibility. Either land gets sold or transferred to the county, or the hospital district can't pay it, the county agrees to step in and pay those funds. But at this point, it's the asset of the hospital district.
I mean, here's how I look at it, and this is, I guess it's a simple way of looking at it. Say this is a car you're talking about rather than your building. We, I guess, as a county, have collateral against your car, but we're not responsible for maintaining it, right? You guys are. Now, if you turn that car back to us, and it's, needs some repair for us to sell it or whatever, then I guess that's something that we would do, because that's all we have left out of the loan, out of the money that we borrowed, you right? That's a simplified version in my mind, that's how I work. That's what I think about it.
Is there any further discussion or comment? Tim?
Just real quick question, Mr. Chairman. You have a document going around between the two boards regarding 4 alternatives. Where does that alternative document come from? Is that from DEQ? Is that from the county?
From Brown, from Brownsfield. Is it
Just
not?
wondering where that options came from.
Does it say where that comes from, Karen?
The Tetra Tech,
Check, okay.
and it's been presented to the Central Montana Brownfields Coalition.
Was there a second to that motion?
Yes, Darrell seconded. So the motion's been made and seconded to support the hospital district in moving into the brownfield operation for the former Grover Exxon building. Take a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
And I'll agree with Darrell, this by no means answers all the questions
No.
or ends the discussions. I expect that we'll be working very closely through this entire process. I hope we'll be working very closely through this entire process as partners that we are for the citizens. Lots of questions still out there.
Yeah.
Great
I
opportunity for you
agree with
guys to
Darrell.
get that regalia, and I really hope that it works the way we hope it will.
And I agree with Darrell. The property belongs to the hospital district. It is our responsibility. But on the other hand, it is the county's responsibility to make sure that we are, and that's why we're asking your support, that we are doing what we're supposed to do. If a bank makes a loan, they make sure you have insurance on the building, or the car, whatever, so that they're covered. But it is our responsibility.
Thank you. Yes, Tim?
One more question, Mr. Chairman. If according to the agenda, we're talking about planning for the collateral issue, And of course, moving forward with the demolition and soil abatement under whatever the wording is in alternative 4, I guess the question that a lot of people are gonna wonder is, because it's been stated that the building and property in its current state has got basically a negative value, where is the taxpayer going to be at in that loan with this process moving forward? Because again, it's part of the planning, it's part of the agenda, allow us to, Bill, let the people know what's going on. I'm not sure if we can get an answer for that at that time.
We don't know at this point.
Yeah, we don't really know, once we get into the actual movement of what's going on with Brownsville, we're not really gonna know where that's gonna be at.
And even the cost of the remediation, we don't know, because that's until, and it even states it in here, it says until there is a work plan has been prepared, we have no idea what the abatement will cost. So this is just the first step in the process.
Knowing
To get
how
to that
these
point.
things have worked before, and this is, excuse me, I
Yep.
didn't mean to interrupt you. There's gonna be a lot of paperwork, a lot of paper shuffling. Won't get much definitive knowledge of anything.
A lot of
Understood.
those questions just can't be answered till we start into the process.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn our board, I'd like to set a time and date for a reorganizational meeting. We have a new board member, and traditionally we reorganize promptly after that, and so you want to meet when and where? Any ideas, any thoughts?
Well, since Tom's come on board, I think we should meet sooner than later.
Yeah.
And this is a good public space to meet, as long as the commissioners will allow us to meet here. So,
What, John is the only one of us that's still working and not retired, so. John and Don, I'm sorry.
You better watch yourself.
and Tom's still
Oh,
working.
Tom's working too,
But you and I are the only.
Okay.
Slackers.
So what do all these working stiffs have to say about what's a good time to meet?
I think the sooner the better is good.
Pardon?
But you have to publicize it.
You gotta have public notice and so forth, so.
You could do next week, but probably not this week. So it's Friday.
And we've talked before, do we want to do it during the day or in the evening, which allows more public participation and only interferes with one working person?
You mean if you meet at 9?
Yeah. So I guess that we need to decide if we want to meet during the day like this.
Well, it's up to the board to decide, what we want, let me make a proposal.
What days work better for the working class?
Wednesday.
Wednesday? All right.
Okay.
Wednesdays are good for me too.
Daytime or evening?
Early morning is best.
Early morning, about 7 or 6?
5:30.
You will not
Five.
have a quorum at that meeting.
Well, since we have a very limited agenda, it should only take a very few minutes, so. I would say it's probably a 30-minute meeting, probably.
10.
Unless there's something else to go on the agenda, I don't see if there is.
10:30 or 11.
If it's next Wednesday, this room is booked until at least 4-ish, 8 AM starting until 4.
Can't we have it in the building?
You could, yes, prove
Want
the
to bring
points.
your
Yeah.
snacks.
Yeah.
Not if it's raining, because the roof is collapsed.
But you might have a quorum problem with the black mold attending.
Is there an intentional irony between Brownfield and the land farm that they spread the soil on?
Very possible.